The lavishly decorated cake looked perfect for a celebration. However, the next moment presented an unbelievable scene. Suddenly, my mother-in-law grabbed the cake and smashed it into my face. "This is how you educate a bride." While saying this, she looked at my cream-covered face and laughed even more. How did it come to this? My big day turned into a disaster thanks to my in-laws. And I finally hit my limit with all the emotions I was holding back. I took a deep breath and gently wiped the cream off my face. "I'm leaving. My name is Alyssa Gale, a 27-year-old office worker. I lost my dad when I was a child. And since then, it's been just my mom and me. Although I sometimes feel the loneliness of not having my dad, my mom's warm love has always supported me. She is a strong and kind person who, despite her busy work schedule, closely watched over my growth and invested a lot in my education, thanks to which I think I became an independent adult. Dreaming of repaying my mom, I have given my all in both my studies and career. My dad passed away when I was 5 years old. It was a sudden accident. But my mom rarely talks about the details. The memories of that time are vague. But I vividly remember seeing my mom holding back her tears. After losing my dad, we headed to where my mom's family lived. I was a little bewildered by the change, but thanks to my mom's kindness, I managed to stay cheerful instead of feeling down all the time. Later on, as I became an adult, I had a crazy encounter in a place I never expected. One day, while attending a local music festival with friends, I noticed a man about to start playing the guitar. That was Sean, who would later become my husband. He seemed to be pouring his passion into the music more than anyone else there, and his serious expression caught my heart. After he finished playing, I took the chance to talk to him. "Your performance was wonderful." I was moved. He seemed a bit surprised, but happily responded, "Thank you. It's fun to play music with everyone here." Our first conversation started with music. We joined friends for a drink later that day. And Sean and I quickly delved deep into discussions about our hobbies and lives. He normally worked as an office worker but had been learning guitar since he was young. I had also played the piano since childhood. So music was a common topic that quickly brought us closer. A few weeks after exchanging contact information, he asked me out on a date. We spent the evening at a local jazz bar, talking about our dreams and aspirations against the backdrop of live music. After more regular dates, a natural relationship began, and several months in, we had built a deep trust. One winter night, he invited me to a beautiful restaurant and proposed. "Alyssa, would you walk through a colorful life filled with music with me?" With a bit of nervousness, he said this and presented a beautiful ring. Tears naturally flowed from my eyes. I was so happy to be proposed to by him that I heartily said yes. We then began meeting each other's families and preparing for the wedding. My mom quickly liked his warm personality and wholeheartedly blessed our future. Our relationship began through music. And I am confident that music will continue to enrich our lives. However, during our engagement, I felt a nagging doubt. It was due to the strained relationship with Sean's family. Sean's family was a collection of elites. His dad Robert, mom Judy, and sister Kathy were all high achievers with high education and income. Especially his mom Judy, who seemed to own a cosmetics company. It seemed like she wasn't supportive of my marriage to Sean at all. Even though she didn't say anything, her cold attitude and minor actions felt like a rejection. The first day I visited Sean's house, I tried to smile as much as possible under the tension and greeted his mom. "Hello, I'm Alyssa. Thank you so much for having me today." However, after a brief silence, she responded with a restrained voice. "Well, come in." There was no warmth in her voice, and the atmosphere did not feel welcoming. As I was led into the spacious living room, the luxuriousness of the furniture almost overwhelmed me. At that moment, Sean kindly held my hand as if to support me, which was the only relief at that time. At dinner, after exchanging greetings again, an onslaught of questions from his mom began. "Which university did you graduate from, Alyssa?" "A local state university." The moment she heard my answer, a slight stiffness appeared on her face. Considering she was a graduate from a famous private university, every time the conversation turned to education, I couldn't help but feel diminished. His sister Kathy often talked to me in a friendly manner, and we had fun discussing work and hobbies. But his mom's cold gaze made it difficult for me to truly enjoy the conversation. Additionally, the fact that I was raised by a single mom also seemed to displease her. During the meal, she suddenly said, "What kind of work did your mom do, Alyssa?" "She's retired now, but she used to work at a local supermarket." "Oh, and she put you through university?" "She must have worked day and night." "I can't imagine doing that. Just at a supermarket." Her words clearly contained a nuance that looked down on my upbringing. And each time she spoke, my heart gradually cooled. Sean could tell I was feeling awkward and would jump in whenever. His mom threw out a sarcastic comment, but even with him backing me up, I still felt uneasy inside. On the way home, Sean held my hand and said, "Sorry my mom asked so much. I'll talk to her later. But no matter what my family thinks, I'm marrying you, Alyssa. Don't worry." I was grateful for his thoughtfulness, but it couldn't completely ease my heart. I struggled between my desire to be accepted by his family and the harsh reality of their disapproval. Night after night, I was plagued with doubts about whether my marriage to Sean would truly bring me happiness. Still, I tried to build a good relationship with his family, sending flowers and gifts for his mom's birthday and greeting her politely during each visit. However, my efforts were hardly appreciated, and she continued to maintain a cold distance. Months passed, and finally, the awaited wedding day arrived. Since it was a special day, I was more spirited than usual, wearing makeup perfected with my mom, and a pure white wedding dress we had chosen together. Waiting next to Sean for our entrance, I felt so uplifted that I wondered if this was a dream or reality. Reflecting on our journey, the realization of starting a new life with Sean filled my heart. Approximately 100 guests attended, with surprisingly many being Sean's associates, making the ceremony larger than expected. Our friends and relatives gathered, sending us heartfelt blessings. "Alyssa, be happy," my mom said with tears in her eyes, smiling as Sean and I exchanged eternal vows in the chapel. The reception proceeded smoothly, filling the venue with the guests' smiles and celebratory atmosphere. Just as I began to relax from the initial tension, my mother-in-law suddenly stood up, took a microphone, and approached the podium. "Thank you all for gathering here today. Actually, since you're the bride, I have prepared a surprise for you, Alyssa." As her voice echoed through the venue, I felt a chill down my spine. A bad premonition crossed my mind, but I was unable to move due to the cheering from around. "Here's the surprise." Along with her words, a large cake, beautifully decorated and perfect for the celebration, was brought in. But in the next moment, an unbelievable scene unfolded. Suddenly, my mother-in-law grabbed the cake and smashed it into my face. I couldn't comprehend what had happened at first. Soft cream spread all over my face and dripped down my dress. My vision turned white, and the shock made it difficult even to breathe. The venue fell silent for a moment. However, that silence was broken by a shrill laughter. The perpetrator, my mother-in-law, was laughing uncontrollably without any attempt to hold back. Kathy, the sister-in-law, also burst into laughter at the scene. "This is how you educate a bride." My mother-in-law continued to deepen her laughter as she watched my cream-covered face. I stood frozen, unable to speak. The guests looked at me with puzzled expressions, but no one moved. They probably didn't know how to react to such a sudden incident. "Mom, what are you doing? That's too much." Sean raised his voice, but his mom ignored him and kept laughing. "What are you getting so upset about? It's just a little surprise. How can the star of the show have such a face? Come on, you should laugh too." Next to her, my sister-in-law aimed a camera at me, while my father-in-law looked on indifferently. My mind was in turmoil. How could this happen? My big day turned into a disaster thanks to my in-laws. And I finally hit my limit with all the emotions I was holding back. I took a deep breath and gently wiped the cream from my face. Despite feeling the gaze of the entire venue on me, the fear of those eyes had vanished. "I'm leaving," I calmly announced and grabbed the hem of my dress, slowly walking towards the venue's door. There was no reason to stay in this humiliating place any longer. Sensing the atmosphere, Sean followed me without a word. "Wait. What are you doing? The reception isn't over yet." My mother-in-law's angry voice echoed behind me. But I couldn't bring myself to look back. As I pushed open the door to leave, a piercing scream came from behind. "Stop. What are you doing?" Surprised, I turned around to find an unbelievable scene. My mother-in-law, dressed in a black dress, was drenched in beer from head to toe. Her usually perfect makeup and hair were completely ruined. Next to her, confidently standing with a beer bottle in hand, was Kevin Foster, an important client from Sean's company and a guest at the reception. His imposing presence made the entire venue hold its breath, and a hushed silence ensued. "Judy, I never thought you'd be this unreasonable." Kevin's low, sharp voice filled the venue. "I don't want anything to do with someone like you anymore. From this point on, we're no longer doing business together." "Please wait, Mr. Foster. This is a misunderstanding. That was just a joke. It was part of the entertainment." Getting so angry over it just shows how narrow-minded she is. "Please don't take it to heart." My mother-in-law, unable to hide her panic, stuttered out excuses. Her face was pale, and her gaze wandered. However, I looked coldly upon her without any reaction. A joke? Entertainment? What do you think a once-in-a-lifetime stage is? Have you ever considered how hard this girl had to work to get here after losing her dad? Kevin's words grew sharper, not giving my mother-in-law a moment's escape. Each word he spoke cornered her further. "I will not forgive anyone who tries to ruin her happiness." With that, Kevin placed the beer bottle on the table with a sharp noise, echoing through the silenced venue. My mother-in-law stood frozen, unable to speak. And my father-in-law and sister-in-law appeared frightened, as an oppressive silence flowed through the venue. I was preparing myself to put an end to this situation. The murmurs of the venue slowly returned, but my mind was caught on Kevin's words. The expression this girl who lost her dad felt as if he knew about me. What did it mean? Was there some connection to my deceased dad? Or was he an acquaintance of my mom's? Confused, I was led out of the venue by Sean. As we stepped out of the reception hall, a sense of relief gradually washed over me. The retort to my mother-in-law, unexpectedly delivered by Kevin, seemed to alleviate the stress that had been accumulating in my heart. Later, in the changing room, I removed my soiled dress, washed my face, and tidied up when a soft knock sounded. Opening the door, I saw my mom and Kevin standing there. They entered the room quietly, their faces bearing a solemn air and a sense of tension. "Mom, Mr. Foster." In my confusion, I alternated my gaze between the two. Then, taking a deep breath, my mom began to speak slowly. "Alyssa, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. It seems that the time has finally come today. Do you have some connection with Mr. Foster or something?" "Yes, Mr. Foster was an old friend of your dad." Surprised, my eyes widened. "My dad's friend? Mr. Foster?" My mind was in disarray, unable to fully grasp my mom's words. I just stood there, looking at Kevin, who quietly watched us, his expression heavy and troubled. "I'm sorry for keeping silent, Alyssa. But I thought this was the moment to speak." As she spoke calmly, my mom began to unveil truths never told before. Actually, your dad died while he was on a trip with Mr. Foster, my mom began. What? They were driving on a mountain road when a landslide caught them, she explained. Mr. Foster rushed to call an ambulance, but sadly, it didn't arrive in time. The sudden revelation of my dad's last moments. And the fact that Mr. Foster was there left me speechless. I stared at him in disbelief, his face contorted with the pain of remembering that day. Of course, it was an unpredictable accident. And there was nothing anyone could have done. But Mr. Foster has felt responsible and has been looking after us ever since. So, Mr. Foster knew about me? Yes, he knew. Mr. Foster responded in a deep, heavy voice. I was the one who invited your dad on that trip. My lack of planning ultimately took him away from you and your mom. I can't make up for it with an apology, but I truly am sorry. I am so sorry. No, Mr. Foster. Please, lift your head. It's unfortunate about my dad. But I don't blame you. I hurriedly reassured him as he apologized deeply. He managed a slight smile and slowly raised his head. Your mom said the same thing to me. I wanted to make amends, but no matter what I suggested, your mom refused. In the end, I couldn't do anything. I was totally in the dark about my dad's accident and Mr. Foster's guilt. Still, there was one question I just couldn't hold back. Mom, why did you refuse Mr. Foster's support? I asked with a trembling voice. Knowing how hard she had struggled made me especially curious about her reasons. Then, a gentle smile crossed my mom's face. Of course, it was financially very tough. Because of that, I made you suffer a lot. But, I wanted to prove to your dad in heaven that I could raise you well on my own. Her words were filled with unwavering determination and deep love for my dad. I truly appreciate Mr. Foster. But I didn't want to live relying on him. I wanted to raise you with my own strength. That's all, she said. Hearing my mom's words, I quietly nodded. Then she turned to me and began speaking in a low, quiet voice. Your mom is a very strong woman. In the end, I couldn't do anything but watch over you too. But I couldn't keep silent about today. I knew I was intruding, but I had to speak up. If your dad were alive, he would never have allowed such disrespect. Listening to that made my heart sink, realizing how deeply Mr. Foster was taking the blame for the whole incident. Now that it was all out in the open, there was no reason to blame him. And I learned just how determined my mom had been to raise me. The weight both of them had carried seemed finally revealed. I smiled gratefully at both my mom and Mr. Foster. With my dad's memory etched in my heart, I began to quietly contemplate how I should live from now on. But it would take more time for everything to settle. More events were yet to unfold before the day would end. Alone in the dressing room after the conversation, the door suddenly burst open. Surprised, I turned to see my mother-in-law, breathless and pale. Her hair was haphazardly tied back, and the usual flamboyance was nowhere to be seen. In her casual clothes, having discarded her beer-soaked kimono, she looked much older. Panic was evident in her eyes. I'm sorry, Alyssa. May I talk to you for a moment? She started with a composed voice, but I didn't say anything back. The way she acted all polite felt like there was something else going on beneath the surface. I'm truly sorry about earlier. She hurriedly continued, approaching me. But the sincerity was missing from her voice, it sounded almost theatrical. That cake incident, it was part of my cosmetic company's promotion, she explained. It was meant to showcase our skin-friendly cream as part of the entertainment. I would appreciate it if you could explain it that way to everyone. I couldn't believe what she said. It was such a weak justification for that embarrassing act being labeled as a company promotion. I was simply dumbfounded. As a business owner, her attempt to escape blame in this manner seemed almost comical. I wondered why she would start such an implausible explanation. But the reason soon became clear. The truth is, Mr. Foster said he's ending our business deal, she said, her voice shaking. His company is a very important client for us. So, I would like you to speak to Mr. Foster on my behalf. At that moment, intense anger surged within me. Her words, disguised as an apology, held no real remorse, just a convenient way to protect her interests. Her attitude of brushing off the insult I suffered as promotion boiled my blood. Outside the dressing room, a low, calm voice echoed. Do you think that excuse is acceptable? Startled, my mother-in-law turned to see Mr. Foster standing at the door. Apparently, he had heard our entire conversation. His expression was calm, but his eyes had a sharp, imposing presence. Promotion? You think that excuse will work? Using such an outrageous act for cosmetic promotion is unprecedented. There will be no further business with your company. This decision is final, Mr. Foster declared. At those words, my mother-in-law's face rapidly paled. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out in the face of his firm stance. And she was left in enforced silence. Please leave the dressing room. I have nothing more to discuss with you. I spoke coldly to my mother-in-law. As my words sank in, she slumped her shoulders weakly and slowly exited the dressing room, seemingly having lost the energy to argue back. Once she was gone, I turned back to Mr. Foster and bowed deeply. Thank you, Mr. Foster. You have helped me again. No need to mention it. I want to be more supportive of you, he replied earnestly. Whenever you're in trouble, feel free to rely on me. His serious gaze reminded me of my dad, and I felt a sense of security. I hoped to hear more about my dad from him in the future. After leaving the dressing room, I headed to the new home I had prepared in advance. Throughout the journey, Sean repeatedly apologized. Alyssa, I'm truly sorry. I can't believe my mom would do something like that. But from now on, I'll definitely protect you, so please be at ease. His words lightened my heart slightly, yet the turmoil caused by my mother-in-law lingered, leaving a residue of discomfort. Once we arrived at our new home, we tried to settle down by making some tea together. While I wanted to think positively about our new life, the fake information posted on social media kept nagging at me. Then, suddenly, a message arrived from a friend who had attended the ceremony. Alyssa, something serious is happening. Check your social media right away. I quickly took my phone and opened my social media app. And the posts I came across were hard to believe. Online, there were posts justifying the face cake incident at my wedding reception as part of a promotional stunt by my cosmetic company, falsely claiming that I had orchestrated it. Further investigation revealed that these posts originated from a fake account using my name, Alyssa Gale. It was clear who was behind this ridiculous act, my mother-in-law. I explained the situation to Sean, and we discussed our options. He immediately understood and was visibly angered. Mom again. Honestly, I wouldn't put it past her, Sean said quietly, his voice tinged with sadness. He must be deeply shocked to know that his own mom took such actions to disgrace me. We can't let this go. We need to confront her directly and clear everything up. Deciding to face my mother-in-law directly, we headed to her house. Upon arrival, the tension in the air was unlike anything we had felt before. The atmosphere at a place we had visited many times was now completely different. When Sean pressed the doorbell, it took a moment before my mother-in-law appeared. Upon seeing us, she initially showed a mix of surprise and anxiety but quickly masked it with a forced smile. Oh, both of you. What brings you here at this hour? I'm actually quite busy. What do you need? She opened the door only halfway and looked down at us with a questioning gaze. Suppressing the rising anger, I began to speak calmly. We need to talk about the false posts spreading on social media. Social media? I'm sorry, I'm not really familiar with that stuff. Don't play dumb. I stepped forward and glared at her sharply. We've already requested disclosure of information about the post claiming I orchestrated the cake incident at the reception. No matter how long it takes, we will reveal your involvement. As I finished my sentence, my mother-in-law's face went through a quick change. She worked hard to stay composed, but you could tell she was really shaken. I don't know what you're talking about. Surely you must be mistaken, Alyssa. Is that so? Then, if I have to correct the facts and sue for defamation, it shouldn't concern you, right? Her eyes widened in shock at my words. She stammered in a trembling voice. Wait. Don't make such a big deal out of it. Her voice trembled and betrayed a sense of panic. However, I remained undisturbed by her demeanor and continued calmly. How is it a big deal? I was not only humiliated at my once-in-a-lifetime wedding, but also defamed on social media. It's only natural that I seek accountability for that. Unable to find her words, my mother-in-law stood there, pale and flustered. Sean stepped forward and faced her directly. Mom, stop making Alyssa suffer anymore. I've reached my limit too. I'm going to say it clearly today. She flinched at his words and took a step back, unable to avert her eyes from Sean's serious gaze. I've registered our marriage with Alyssa. As of today, I've decided to live as a member of the Gale family. That means I'm cutting ties with this house. Hearing this, my mother-in-law was visibly shaken and froze on the spot. My father-in-law and sister-in-law, standing behind, were also stunned, their eyes wide open. My mother-in-law cried out in a trembling voice. Stop, Sean. Don't say things like that. You're my son. Why? Why would you say such awful things? Sean's expression remained resolute as he continued. Given what you have done to Alyssa, I can't just ignore it. I'm going to build a new family with Alyssa. To do that, I need to sever ties with this family. That's my decision. At his declaration, my mother-in-law collapsed to the ground. Please wait. I was wrong. I'll apologize for everything, just don't abandon our family. Tears streamed down her face as she desperately reached out to Sean. But he calmly shook off her hand. I've already made up my mind. I'm going to walk a new path with Alyssa. That's the path I've chosen. Behind my mother-in-law, my father-in-law and sister-in-law stood speechless. My father-in-law hung his head, and my sister-in-law seemed to want to say something, but couldn't find her voice. As we left, we could hear my mother-in-law's cries behind us. But there was no reason for us to stay any longer. To start our new lives, we had to leave this place behind. After exiting the front door, Sean and I held hands and walked forward without looking back, committed to moving forward together. This is truly the end, Sean said, and I quietly nodded. By severing ties with his family, we had finally taken a new step forward. Gradually, I began to hear about the aftermath affecting my in-laws' family. First, my mother-in-law's cosmetics company suffered greatly after Mr. Foster announced he would cease all business dealings with them, leading other major clients to follow suit. Her actions had become a significant issue within the industry, causing her reputation to plummet. As a result, the company fell into financial difficulty and was forced to downsize and lay off many employees a few months later. My father-in-law, who had never been involved in the cosmetics company, found himself isolated due to the scandal. He lost his place at work and ultimately chose to take early retirement. My sister-in-law could not escape the repercussions either. The commotion at the wedding became widely known, and persistent rumors at her workplace led her colleagues and friends to distance themselves from her. She also broke up with her partner, and since then has been living a reclusive life back at her parents' home. On the other hand, my married life with Sean was peaceful. The small home we chose together was always a safe and relaxing haven. Doing simple things like cooking and watching movies together brought me a special kind of happiness. I often met with my mom who lived nearby, and we enjoyed meals together at our home. Recently, Mr. Foster also started visiting more frequently, sharing stories about my dad, which became a new source of joy for me. I'm unsure about what the future has in store, but I'm all about moving forward with my loved ones. I'm enjoying the happiness I feel today, and I'm ready to guard it.